Theater for generations, Aneita Fern.
And we're back inside the Kalita Humphreys Theater in downtown Dallas with Ann Abernathy, our architect, talking to us a little bit about the Frank Lloyd Wright designed theater here off of Turtle Creek. And Ann, tell us a little bit about the space we're in right now. This is the lobby as we've come in out of the parking lot where we were before.
Well, actually, in the original building, we would be outside at this point, and we would be standing under this broad cantilever that gave shelter. And there would be the fountain, and just beyond that was rock, solid rock. And so you had a kind of effect of an intimate grotto. And as you moved into this somewhat compressed space, then you begin to see the cylindrical geometry, and you move through the space to the auditorium. You don't really see where you're going. It's kind of an experience of discovering where you're going. And you're being directed by these windows that almost are like arrows pointing your way toward the entrance to the auditorium.
And one of the things that a lot of people will ask is why was the entry changed? I mean, most people, I would say, would enter off the other end when really the area where we were standing was the original entrance. Why was it changed?
Well, there are a number of different reasons for that. The primary problem was that there historically was not enough parking. And it's important to understand when viewing this building as a work of Frank Lloyd Wright architecture that it was meant to face the uphill side, and there was going to be parking either on the other side of the railroad track or further uphill. So rather than walking up the hill, you would have come slightly downhill from ample parking that was on that side. That was never acquired, and so people just came from the street. And ultimately, when the property expanded and now belonged to the city of Dallas, they were able to build additional parking on both sides. That's one consideration, and the other is that they had such a demand for people wanting to come to the theater. They needed a larger lobby to accommodate the larger number of people that were attending.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the historical designation that the theater has. You were instrumental in getting the historical designation for the Kalita Humphreys Theater, correct?
Yes, I was able to get a grant from the Dallas Architectural Foundation, which helped fund some of the research that I used to write the historic designation report, which was very interesting for me because I had, when I lived in Chicago, I had received a grant to study the Frank Lloyd Wright home and studio, which led to some writing and some preparation of interpretive materials for that building, which was 70 years earlier. So while I felt like I understood Frank Lloyd Wright in the early part of his career, because the home and studio was one of the first buildings he built in 1889. This building was at the end of his career 70 years later, and so I needed to have additional information to understand it better, and so that led to the designation report, and that was a joint effort of the City Historic Preservation Office and the Dallas Theater Center group and other individuals that finally led to it being landmarked by the City of Dallas.
And it's probably good to note that in addition to the historical designation, the City of Dallas continues to view the Kalita Humphreys Theater as an important part of the city, and we're hoping that it has a great future here in Dallas. You continue to lecture on the Kalita Humphreys Theater for groups, including Preservation Dallas, so you're still very active in the theater.
Yes, this is a fascinating building, and I feel very privileged to have been able to work on it.
And now, Ann, we've moved to the entrance of the actual theater itself, so tell us what we're looking at right here.
Well, as I said, you move through this somewhat small space, and it kind of sets you up for a surprise when you move into the auditorium, where the space opens up and you have this sort of, wow, you know, now I'm in a wonderful space.
Shall we walk?
Yes, let's do that.
And now, Ann, we're in the middle of the auditorium space. As you said, it has opened up. You can see exactly what you were mentioning.
Yes, this is could be called a panoramic thrust stage. It's a round stage that moves out into the audience space, and then it has side stages that sort of embrace the audience. So the audience is very intimately related with the stage space. And the ceiling is a coffered ceiling with many positions for lighting instruments, and the circular forms of the coffers are reflecting the circular form of the stage, which is open because Wright cantilevered the fly loft above it. So there's 127 tons of concrete above you when you're standing at the lip of the round stage. But actors have always felt, and audiences as well, that it has a very intimate relationship between actor and audience. Of course, originally, the colors in this space were monochromatic. All of the seating and the carpeting and the walls and so forth were golden or buff colored, and there was a gold curtain. So we're looking at a different kind of aesthetic now than you would have seen in 1959. But speaking of the Aneita Fern Stickley store, it's almost the reverse, where when you come into your store, the space is very open. And then as you move through the store, it gets narrower until you get to the center, and the skylight is above you, and it's kind of like a glade where this filtered light comes down. And when you're in the center, then you look out beyond and see the space expanding on the other side, which draws you toward that vista. So in a way, the flow of space in your store is almost the reverse of the flow of space that Wright created here.
And before we joined you, we actually showed one of the original theater chairs that was designed for the Kalita Humphreys Theater. So I know that's been some speculation and so forth, and that's a topic for a different day.
May I show you one more spatial experience here?
Absolutely.
All right,
I'll
let's
follow
move
you
up in this direction.